What's going on, YouTube people? Welcome back to the channel. A big thank you for joining me on the next instalment of I'm taking Solihull Moors to the Premier League. If you were with me for the last episode, you would have seen that we were in that gap between our League 2 triumph and going into League 1. So we had strengthened the squad. We'd looked and discussed loaning players out to get experience outside of our setup to try and help us for the future. We had a look at the non-existent finances and the squad and how it was building, and at that point we were just about to kick off the League 1 campaign. Well, in today's episode we have now started the League 1 campaign. We have moved forward to the 2nd of February 2026, which means we have gone through another transfer window. In today's episode we were going to cover everything that's happened in the first half of the season, any players that have come in or gone out of the club. We're going to look at the schedule, the tables. We're going to have a look to see if there is any finances still, and then we're going to look at the squad before we push on into the next episode, which will be going to the end of the League 1 campaign. So, to kick us off, let's go and have a look at what had happened in terms of transfers. There were some players that came in. There were also some players that had left the club. So finally, the signing American New Gens to generate money plan started to come together. The first player that left the club was Jordan Price. He left for £1 million. Now, bearing in mind we signed him from PA Classics for nothing. £1 million in the bank was so vital to us because we needed some reinforcements in defence. But he has gone there, and even though he hasn't started any games for them, it's a transfer that we wanted to do. As I said at the start of the save, we were going to go into this where we could try and develop players to sell on, or we were going to try and develop players to keep. This one was a player that, once the £1 million come in, it was always apparent he was going to go. So he's the first one out the door to go to Watford. The next player to leave us was Jeremy Santos, a player who only joined us in the summer, but it was very clear he wasn't going to get into our first team. He only played 6 games, so we moved him on for a $53,000. The next player to leave was Tony Moore, another one of those players we signed from the Dallas Texans. He did do really, really well for us, and I thought he was going to be a big player for the future. But once again, the money came in for him, and he has been allowed to go to Sheffield United. We have retained him on loan, so we know all about Tony Moore. But it meant that we had another 1.4 million rising to 1.6 million in the bank. The next one to leave was Shane Devoren, come from Gotchi in America. Central midfielder, another one who we could have developed and continued to develop, but I just felt it was the right time to start taking the money, as we didn't have a lot to invest in our squad in League 1, and we would probably need that, and also we could go and replace these players, we think. Finally, the other one to go out was Lee Allain. Just signed a professional deal with the club after coming from Reading United. Then we instantly moved him out to Carlisle to try and get some first team experience. So with that money now coming in, we raised £2.8 million in terms of player sales. It meant that we could start to strengthen our back line, and the first player we signed was Oisin McEntee, £120,000 from Portsmouth. Also played for Leyton Orient. He's one who I think fits in perfectly at the club at this level, and we have no problems spending that £120,000. We also have Michael Forbes, who come in for £50,000 from Burnley. He's another centre back who, with that experience of playing in the Premier League for West Ham, Burnley, he's also played for Shrewsbury and Fleetwood. I think he will come in and help us to shore up the defence, because, as you're going to see, we did start to leak goals towards the end of the first half of the season. And the final player we brought in was Tony Springett. He's a younger player, 23, can play on the left wing, the right wing, can play through the centre as well. With that versatility, I think he will be a great option for us. He also replaces Jordan Price. Played for Birmingham, played for Lincoln, played for Norwich, so a sound signing there. So we ended up spending £275,000 but raised £2.8 million. Looking at the finances at the club, it now means that we have an overall balance of £1.6 million, and we have £1.4 million as a transfer budget. We also now have wages to spare. So I didn't spend all of the money that we raised in the January transfer window, because it seemed like this season probably isn't going to be the one that we get promoted, and if I can move some of that money into the next season and keep it at the club, then hopefully we're going to be able to build a squad to get promoted next time around. So, speaking of promotion, let's have a look at the competitions tab and see how we have been getting on. So, we are currently sat 6th in League One, so a playoff place at the moment. League One is looking absolutely tight. Between Plymouth in 9th and top of the table Wycombe, there is just 7 points. This keeps jumping around so much. If I'd have stopped it a game prior, I think we would have been in 8th maybe, or 7th, but it just keeps jumping around. We have been top of the league. We have also been as low as 8th or 9th, and as the season is progressing, it's hopefully going to start to string out a little bit, because that is so concertinaed in terms of how many teams can be doing what at any given moment. In the FA Cup, we were knocked out in the first round by Rochdale. We were knocked out in the Carabao Cup by Stoke City in the third round, and we were knocked out in the Southern section second round by Bournemouth in the Papa John's Trophy. So a little look in depth at League One in terms of our campaign. So we have played 31 games now. We have won 16 of those. We have drawn 6, lost 9, got a goal difference of 12, and we are on 54 points. So as I said, all the teams in and around us are on a similar points total. 2 more points and we would be joint top, but 2 points less and we would be outside of the playoffs. So interesting second half of the season to come for sure. If we look at the club vision tab, we can see that we are untouchable in our job. The board now are giving us an A+ because they weren't expecting to be so high up in the league. They wanted to avoid relegation, and we are certainly going to be doing that. I don't think there is any chance that we are going to be dragged into a relegation battle at this point, February, with that amount of points. In terms of the supporters, C+ from the supporters. Not too sure what's going on with them and why they aren't giving us as high ratings as the board are, but they're disappointed with Mick Clifford's performances, disappointed with Ben Dempsey's performances, disappointed about the 4-2 defeat to Shrewsbury. Speaking of the 4-2 defeat to Shrewsbury, let's have a little look at the schedule and see how we've been getting on then. So we kicked off against Bradford and we won 3-2, and in fairness, we started off in August fantastically. We beat Cheltenham 3-1, beat Wigan 1-0, beat Derby on penalties, and we beat Fleetwood 3-0. We did lose to MK Dons. We then had a good start to September with a 3-1 victory in the Papa John's Trophy, 4-0 win against Gillingham. We did lose to Barnsley. We then beat Northampton and then took a little bit of a wobble. 3 defeats back to back, bringing us into October. We beat Bristol City 2-0, and then we also started to wobble once again. We had 3 draws on the bounce with 2 2s and a 0-0. We then lost to Wycombe and Plymouth, conceding 8 goals in 2 games. We bounced back against Bolton with a 4-2 victory before a 2-2 draw against Charlton. Then conceded 4 against Rochdale in the FA Cup. We lost 2-0 to Brentford under-21s before winning 2-1 against Preston. We then lost to Rochdale, won 2 games back-to-back, beating Colchester 4-1 and Birmingham 3-2 in an exciting game. Conceded 2 against Bournemouth as we went out of the Papa John's Southern section second round in that trophy. Coventry beat 3-2, drew 3-3 with Peterborough, beat Port Vale 3-0, Birmingham 3-2 once again. We then lost to Shrewsbury 4-2, lost to Oxford 2-1. Coming into January, we are in a good run of form currently. We beat Notts County 4-0, Wimbledon 2-1, Wycombe 1-0, had a 2-2 draw with Plymouth and a 3-1 win against Gillingham. So we are looking up. The only thing is, going into the second half of the season, we are going to need to keep that momentum going if we are going to continue in the playoff places. I do think it is going to be a lot tighter than it looks. So if we go into the squad planner and show you what the assistant report is for the best 11. So currently it's sat with Boot, Newton, Forbes, McKenty, Matheson, Ellis, Maycock, Williams, Honeyman, Springett, Moore and Oliver. So there are a few players that we could jiggle around in there. There are some other players that could come into the first team with absolutely no problems. If we have a look at the squad, I can show you some of the stats for some of the new boys. So Ezio Toure, after last season, he was our leading goal scorer. He had a fine season, but the step up seemed to catch him out a little bit to begin with. But he has played 5 games and scored 4 goals in League One. So he's developing nicely. However, he's going to struggle to dislodge our front 2. I mean, Gary Oliver come in. He has done well. Played 17, scored 12. And then if we show you Ian Beveridge, this is the player that I was excited about in the last video. Now, it does show that he's declining in terms of his playing ability, but I wouldn't believe that for a second, because he has played 20 times in the league, scored 9, assisted 6. He has played in the FA Cup. He played in the Carabao Cup and the Papa John's Trophy. So overall, he's played 22 games, scoring 9, assisting 6. And he's got a 6.73 average rating, which is not too bad. The only downside to Mr. Beveridge, even though he looks like a wonderful, almost wonder kid type of player, he does suffer with injuries. He has been in and out of the team. And as I said, there are a few things he needs to work on. It says there one of his cons is his strength. So hopefully he can start to bulk up quite quickly. Looking at some of the other players, so Tony Moore has left the club but come back on loan. So it is showing him as 19 games played, 11 goals, 2 assists, 7.04. This one might actually come back to bite us, but I did say at the start that we were looking to bring these players in and then maybe move them on once they were ready to be moved on. We got the money, Sheffield United got the player. I do think for the future, though, he's going to be a fantastic player, and fingers crossed we can replace him anyway. Looking further on up, Harvey Williams Honeyman has recently been named as the America Under-20s captain, I believe it is. Another one who is developing really nicely into the game. 20 years old now. He's developed in terms of being a central midfielder, can play as a deep line playmaker, Mazzala, Carrilero, advanced playmaker. This season, 28 games in League One, 2 goals, 5 assists, 6.91 average rating. Played really well in the Carabao Cup as well. I think he's definitely one for the future and will continue to drive the club forwards. Looking further up the list, David Hodge, who we brought in in between the seasons. He has managed to play 8 games as a starter, scoring 2 and assisting 2. Hasn't played particularly well, but he is developing nicely as a footballer, and I do think he could challenge to get into the first team if something happens to Matheson. Got Kyle Albon, who is a defender from the previous season. Struggled a little bit in terms of the step up in quality, and is partly one of the reasons that we had to go out and buy a few new centre-backs, but he's still developing as a footballer, and I think there is more to come from him. Next up, we've got Mick Clifford. He's developing nicely as a footballer too. Still doesn't look impressive in his technicals, but those mentals and some of the physicals are helping him. 22 years old. I prefer to play him as a right-back. Our assistant seems to think he's a centre-back, so a little bit of a conflict of where his best position is, but he's getting game time and he's improving. And then finally, where was the other one? So the other one that come in was Oliver Hall. He has been loaned out. He's now playing for Fylde. He's only played in 1 game so far, but he hopefully will go on to develop. And the other one that we have loaned out is Josh Jackson, recently called up to the first team. He did play some games early on in the save when we needed him, but now we need him really to kick on. He's 18, only 5'2" still, bless him, and his technicals still need work, but he has started to develop some mentals and his physicals are coming along nicely. So if we can get some good first team football opportunities like he has at Eastleigh, I think maybe he can start to develop. So that is pretty much going to cover that. Second half of the season is going to be interesting. We have enough games to hopefully stay within the playoff range. Do need to sort the defending out, so hopefully the new faces will come in and shore up the defence. But going forwards, I think it's a positive first season in Sky Bet League One. Even if we don't get out of it the first time of asking, we are now building a squad that hopefully can take us the second time of asking. So everything to look forward to in this save. Right then, if you're with me at this point of the video, firstly, a big thank you. Secondly, if you're enjoying the series, enjoying the save, don't forget to hit the like and subscribe button. Cannot thank you all enough for the support across the past couple of weeks and months. It's been absolutely fantastic watching the channel grow. If you want to see anything on the channel, drop a comment in the comment section down below. If you want something else in terms of your content viewing, I have other things on the channel. There are Let's Plays, Wonder Kids, hints, tips, tutorials if you want to play this 23-24 database, those kinds of things. But for this one, I'm going to end it there. Big thank you for watching. I'll see you on another video very soon.